Everyone thinks of old Hollywood as this glamorous, larger-than-life fantasy world, all glitz, charm, and straight-laced stars lighting up the silver screen. You picture the red carpets, the flashing bulbs, the giant studio signs towering over Sunset Boulevard, and all those iconic stars delivering perfect lines in black and white magic. But what most people don't realize is that some of the actors who helped build that fantasy were living double lives, hiding who they really were just to keep their careers from being destroyed. Back in the 1930s, being gay in Hollywood wasn't just frowned upon, it was dangerous. Careers could end in a heartbeat, studio contracts could be ripped up overnight, and even being seen in the wrong place with the wrong person could tank your image for good. But despite that, a few stars quietly pushed back. They didn't wave flags or speak out loud, but they lived their truth in the only ways they could, through quiet defiance, behind-the-scenes relationships, and a refusal to completely conform to the image that was expected of them. Nobody embodied that quiet rebellion more than William Haynes. This guy was huge in the late 1920s and early 1930s, like top-billed, headlining, box-office gold type of huge. He had this effortless charm, this magnetic screen presence that made audiences instantly fall in love with him. He wasn't your typical tough guy. He brought a kind of mischief and charisma that felt fresh. But off-screen, Haynes was doing something that was almost unheard of at the time. He was living with his partner, Jimmy Shields, and not exactly hiding it. Within Hollywood circles, it was basically an open secret. People knew, executives knew, and while it was tolerated for a while because Haynes was making the studio tons of money, there was always this looming tension. He was breaking the unspoken rule of old Hollywood. Don't let the public know who you really are. Eventually, the situation came to a head. Louis B. Mayer, the all-powerful head of MGM, basically told Haynes he had to make a choice. Either leave Jimmy and enter a fake, studio-arranged marriage with a woman just to keep up appearances, or kiss his acting career goodbye. And without blinking, Haynes chose Jimmy. He chose love. At the height of his fame, with all the money and spotlight and power that came with it, he walked away from Hollywood because he refused to live a lie. And what's even more remarkable is that he didn't just fade into obscurity. He and Jimmy built a whole new life together as interior designers, and they were good, like designing for Hollywood elite good. Joan Crawford called them her favorite couple. They stayed together for nearly 50 years, quietly and proudly, while the studio system that tried to bury them eventually crumbled. But Haynes wasn't the only one who had to navigate this brutal tightrope. There were others, huge names, who lived in fear of exposure every single day. Ramon Navarro was another early Hollywood heartthrob, a silent film icon with smoldering eyes and a devoted fan base. He was one of the first Latin American stars to break through, which was already a big deal. But Navarro was also gay, and the weight of that secret, mixed with deep religious guilt from his Catholic upbringing, made his personal life incredibly complicated. He never publicly acknowledged his sexuality, and that isolation wore him down over the years. He drank, he withdrew, and tragically, in 1968, he was murdered in his own home. Tabloids had a field day with it, painting it as some sordid scandal, but what they ignored was the bigger picture, that this was a man who had been forced to live in hiding his entire life, because the industry never gave him another option. Then there's George Cukor, one of the most respected and successful directors of Hollywood's golden age. He directed films like The Philadelphia Story and My Fair Lady, and he had this real knack for getting incredible performances out of strong female leads. Behind the scenes, Cukor was gay too. He never said it publicly, but it was understood by pretty much everyone in the industry. His home became a kind of safe haven, a place where other closeted actors, writers, and artists could gather without fear. His parties were legendary, but more than that, they were necessary. They were one of the only places in Hollywood where people could just be themselves for a few hours without looking over their shoulders. It's hard to imagine how much those moments must have meant to people who spent the rest of their lives pretending. You also had people like Cary Grant and Randolph Scott, two massive stars who, depending on who you ask, may have had something more than just a bachelor friendship. The two of them lived together on and off for over a decade, and while the studios always insisted it was just a financial convenience or two pals saving money, the photos tell a different story. There are snapshots of them cooking together, lounging in robes, reading by the pool. These weren't press shots. They were intimate glimpses into a life that, for them, probably felt real and safe. But the second rumors started to bubble up. The studios jumped in with fake romances, arranged public outings with women, and carefully worded interviews to shut everything down. It was about control, about image, and about fear. The pressure wasn't just from the studios either. The entire Hollywood ecosystem was built to expose, shame, and erase anyone who stepped out of line. Tabloids thrived on scandal. Columnists like Hedda Hopper made a career out of digging up dirt, and studio executives would hire private investigators to follow their own stars just to keep tabs on them. If someone was caught at a gay bar, the fallout could be immediate. Some were forced into sham marriages. Others were quietly dropped from contracts. A few were sent to rehab or shipped off to Europe for a while to ride out the bad press. It was calculated, cruel, and designed to protect the illusion at all costs, no matter what it did to the people behind it. And yet somehow, these artists still made magic. They still showed up, still created, still delivered unforgettable performances that moved millions. They helped shape the very soul of Hollywood, even as they were being erased from its story. They wrote screenplays, designed costumes, choreographed dance numbers, and poured their hearts into roles, all while carrying this massive, invisible burden. It's not just impressive, it's heroic, because they didn't have the luxury of being open, of sharing their love or their pain publicly. But they kept going anyway. Looking back now, it's wild to realize how many of the legends from that era were gay, bisexual, or somewhere in between, and how few of them ever got to tell their stories. The narrative was controlled, whitewashed, and made safe for mainstream audiences. But the truth was always there, hiding between the lines. These weren't just footnotes in film history, they were foundational. They helped build the myth of Hollywood, and their contributions deserve to be remembered for what they really were: brave, beautiful, and absolutely essential.